In the world of Jeeps, commercial trucking, classic cars, and motorcycles, the LED headlight has become a hot topic. My name is Chris with Headlight Revolution, and in this video, we are talking about 7-inch round LED headlights. We're going to compare the options for you through objective comparison with measurements and manufacturer's public specifications. We will also do our own testing by setting the lights up in our stand at 25 feet from the wall to keep them all at the same distance and height. And while indoors, we can show you the beam pattern against the wall, and while we're doing that, we'll measure lux using this digital light meter. I couldn't wait to get my hands on one to do the test myself, so here we are. And let me tell you right off the bat, I'm not impressed. This is one of my least favorite headlights in the lineup. A couple reasons. First of all, it's just a generic Chinese headlight that's not very well built. I mean, it's really as simple as that. It's not DOT approved. It has really wildly exaggerated lumen numbers. The beam pattern isn't aligned correctly. It has poor coloring in the light output. The connector fell apart right out of the box, and the list goes on. This headlight was one of the first to come out of the Chinese market in 2014 that was starting to copy and knock off the JW speaker line of LED headlights. You can see on low beam, the two center projectors are both illuminated. They have a very blue 7000 or even 8000K color to them. And when we shine them on the wall in a second, you're gonna see that those two beam patterns are not even aligned. When we go to high beam, you can see that the two center projectors stay illuminated, and now the four batwing style reflectors with LEDs inside of them turn on. It's bright, but it's not nearly as bright as the JW speaker headlight. The quality is awful. It's a huge headlight. You'd have a tough time putting this in your Jeep. It's not DOT approved, and the wiring on the backside is just pathetic. As you can see on the backside of the headlight, it's actually quite monstrous, and it has a pair of tall moisture vents that you can actually spin. So I'm wondering how well those actually seal and provide ventilation. But the way the wiring comes out is this black gooped up silicone compression fitting with this rubbery flexible wire coming out. And I actually had to, excuse my electrical tape here, we were just trying to hold everything together. I didn't do this for the video to show you that it's a bad headlight. My opinion is based on the test, and this happened for real, and I couldn't hardly believe it. The wires here are tinned or soldered at the end, and the crimp is barely crimped on there. I have to wonder how many people are gonna buy this headlight, put it in their vehicle, and go down the road. My headlight stopped working. Well, it's probably just your wire connection in the back. The other thing that I really am not a huge fan of with big LED headlights is them being fan cooled. Yeah, this headlight has a fan inside of it. When you turn it on, you can hear this humming sound, and it makes me wonder, why does this headlight require a fan inside the housing to cool it down when the other ones don't? You got this massive heat sink and they can't keep it cool. To me, that's a sign of poor engineering design. I don't want a fan inside my 7-inch round LED headlight, and you probably shouldn't either. This generic Chinese headlight uses 6 unknown style LED chips. The input has a 12 to 24 volt DC input, a 4-inch mounting depth. It is not DOT approved. This headlight draws 2.5 amps at 12 volts DC on low beam and 2.7 amps at 12 volts DC on high beam. On low beam at 25 feet, this headlight produces 301 lux. On high beam, this headlight produces 701 lux at 25 feet. Low beam produces 2,800 raw lumen. High beam produces 4,450 raw lumen. Low beam produces 1,680 effective lumen, and high beam produces 2,670 effective lumen. This headlight is made in China and is available in black or chrome on eBay, Amazon, or Alibaba. This is such a blue beam pattern, you are not going to see anything, and the lux reading proves it. The best lux reading at 25 feet we can get here is 301 at a lumen rating of 2,800. So either they're lying about the lumen rating or it's just an extremely inefficient light. The beam pattern has a good shape to it. The cutoff line is correct, but why does it have two cutoff lines? Well, it's because it has two projectors vertically above each other that both create the low beam function, and they are not aligned. So that's kind of a funny effect. You have two blue color flickers at the top of the beam pattern. It is pretty wide, but it's just not very bright. At 25 feet, this generic Chinese headlight creates 701 lux, so it's definitely better than the low beam, but still not exactly impressive. And all it does is create this massive blob of light. It is kind of bright, so you are going to see down the road better, you are going to see up in the trees better, but the high beam pattern is kind of centered around the low beam pattern. Like the center of the low beam pattern is at the same point as the center of the high beam pattern, instead of them being offset like a normal headlight is supposed to. So I think this particular headlight is kind of a failure in headlamp design. Normally you're supposed to get aligned cutoff lines. Normally you're supposed to get decent colors. Normally you're supposed to get a separation of low beam and high beam kind of stacked on top of each other. And this one just doesn't do any of that. They rate the low beam at 2,800 lumens, and we don't really believe that that's an accurate rating. This headlight doesn't put out much of anything past the 80-yard mark, and any light above the 40-yard mark is pretty dim and has a bluish purple hue. It does go into the ditches, so we can say that it has some decent width, but for the low beam it just doesn't have a sharp cutoff line, it has really blue coloring, and it doesn't throw very far down the road. When you switch this generic Chinese headlight to high beam, you lose your left to right low beam output, but you do get a pretty strong high beam. We like the high beam, it's pretty impressive, other than the fact that it's really narrow. Now, if you could have the low beam on with the high beam, then the high beam would be okay. But for each one, you're sacrificing some pretty major features. With low beam, you don't get a whole lot of downrange light, and it's a funny blue color. But on high beam, it's really narrow, and you're no longer illuminating much in the ditches. Now that we're approaching the end of the video, I hope you know enough about the selection of 7-inch round LED headlights in the market today to make a decision. I'm not going to rank these best to worst. I'm going to let you make up your own decisions. All I will say is these 7 in front of me are probably the only 7 that I would ever recommend to anybody for anything. So, thank you very much for watching. Hope you were entertained a little bit. I hope you were really educated. And if you want to see what else we are doing with Headlight Revolution, visit our website, www.headlightrevolution.com. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next set of videos. And of course, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.